Welcome back, my friends, to the AA Recovery Interviews podcast. I'm your host, Howard L., and I'm an alcoholic. Sober since January 1st, 1988, one day at a time. I'm grateful you've joined us. AA Recovery Interviews is the podcast where AA members share their extraordinary stories of experience, strength, and hope. Thanks for taking the time to listen. Today's show features Ray O., a man I met when he first came to a men's meeting I attend more than 12 years ago. Ray's difficult road to sobriety was paved with many failed attempts to get sober over the years. Each attempt was thwarted by the belief that his situation was somehow different than the people he met in 6 different treatment centers and sporadic AA meetings. The similarities of his loneliness and wanting to fit in were eclipsed by the differences he saw in his social standing and material advantages he enjoyed via his family of wealth and privilege. Each alcoholic debacle he encountered over the years, such as totaling 3 new BMWs and facing multiple DUI charges, was met by his parents' earnest yet enabling efforts to bail him out of trouble. After each extrication, Ray's half-hearted commitments to sobriety were accompanied by fabulous business opportunities that were viewed by all as some kind of antidote to his worsening alcoholism. Though he did quit drinking, he continued to use marijuana, and his behavior didn't change at all. The resulting downward slide, unaided by family help in the end, brought Ray both business ruin and ruptures in all of his relationships. He finally came back to AA, and though he encountered a few more slips along the way, he got a sponsor and worked the steps, and was finally able to claim his last sobriety date in 2009. The gifts of sobriety have been many for Ray over the years, and, most importantly, they've been gifts of similarity shared with his fellows in the program. Instructive, too, have been the severe challenges he has faced, including his battle with a form of leukemia that most people don't survive. Through it all, Ray has developed a deep love for the program and an unwavering commitment to service work. Especially during the COVID pandemic, when his comorbidities made it impossible for live meetings, he has been instrumental in setting up and managing a number of Zoom AA meetings around the country. Thankfully, his is the first phase of recovery that many new AA members encounter when they log on to Zoom for their first meeting. I'm grateful to have Ray in my life and appreciate all he does for our AA community. I think you'll find his story to be both encouraging and illustrative. So, settle in for the next hour or so while you enjoy the inspiring words of my good friend and AA brother, Ray O.
Ray, recovered alcoholic.
Hi, Ray. I'm really glad we're able to do this in person. I've had the interest of hearing your story and talking about your recovery for a long time.
I met you at Outpost.
Right.
It was this big, huge group, this huge room. Mm-hmm. And at 3 years sober, I felt like a newcomer, really.
Yeah.
And there was all this just incredible sobriety, so many titans of, of use in AA. Mm-hmm. And so it was intimidating. And I met you because you were at the door. You met me the next week that I came back. You knew my name. It meant so much to me, but I've seen it with other guys. And that's a big deal. It was a big deal for me, and I'm sure I've heard other people say the same.
You came into that meeting at 3 years, but when did you first come into Alcoholics Anonymous? What's your original sobriety date?
So my first exposure to AA was in 1993.
Okay.
So my sobriety date this time is April 16th of 2009.
Okay.
So if you do the math,
so 16 years.
Yeah, it didn't stick. I'm not a one-chip wonder. The first exposure that I had, I started drinking, and it started to become an issue when I failed out of college, basically. I got, my GPA dropped to a 1.7. I dropped to three classes. I failed them all, and my parents were like, you're coming back home. And by that point, it had gone from weekend drinking to, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then, Monday night football. And then, it had become an everyday thing.
Was this a carryover from high school then? You went right into college with that way of doing things?
For my generation, I started late, and I did not start drinking with the intention to go get drunk until I was a junior in high school. Yeah. I come from a family that was, it wasn't that there was no alcohol, but it wasn't that there was a broken home. It wasn't that there was raging alcoholism. What I was exposed to, I was an altar boy. Fortunately, I have a good experience to report from that, in that I had a grandmother that was very saintly. My mother and grandmother have what I call a loving heart, that I have. And so I spent years trying to hide the fact that I'm a nice guy. I'm a good guy, right?
You were trying to hide that fact?
Oh, yeah. So, I was a person, I took pride in my grades. My dad is a computer software engineer, and so I had a computer very early. It was a great world.
Yeah.
Up until junior high. And then I found out that, girls were far more attracted to the guys that had a little rough edge to them. It's where my drinking story starts, actually, because that became of more import, being accepted, being, being a part of the cool crowd. I remember this. This was in high school, starting to go to parties where there was drinking, where there was a keg. That just was never on the table. It was shared with me that we don't do that.
So looking back at your childhood, what was the messaging that was going on in your family of origin?
There was always drinking and partying.
Yeah.
But it was always kind of a slap on the hand that that's not for you. You don't do that. I have a big extended family. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older that became an issue. What I did see in here, my father was one of the original founders of a company here. And so we were removed from some of the other family members. And there was always a cautionary tale. This person is drinking or smoking or doing whatever it was. Mm-hmm. Don't be like that, so to speak. It was really just the messaging. What became more important to me, was that acceptance. I always felt different. I always felt like I didn't belong, even in crowds and even amongst family. It's, I think there's an ism, I believe. Looking back and doing step work, I can see how I reacted to things, taking things too personally, too sensitive, being overly concerned about what people think or thought.
Your father, if you started a company, can I assume that socioeconomically you guys were in pretty good shape?
Yes, and we were kind of looked at as the people of privilege, and there was jealousy, and I always felt like I didn't belong. We were the only black family at the country club, and it put us in a position to, we traveled, we went all the places that you can think of, we skied. As those things met in high school, where I started to want to be accepted. What I saw was the people that drank were people that were, the cool kids. I was far more concerned about being a part of that crowd. So I played tennis, and it was almost like, I want to play basketball.
Right.
Because that's a little bit cooler.
Yeah.
So I started hanging out with some of the athletes, and, when a cup got passed my way to drink, I was just like, I don't like how this tastes, but if this is what it takes to be cool, it's what I'm going to do. The first time that I made a decision, I'm getting drunk tonight. It was my first real breakup. I remember being in my room, and I went downstairs and I got a 4-pack of Seagram's wine coolers, drinking my sorrows away, so to speak. And so at a certain point in high school, I shifted this group of people that I grew up with that typically, most of them had the same values as my family. And I started to hang out with a little more dangerous element of people. And their way of having fun and drinking, it was not a keg party, but it was, a lot harder stuff. That the first night that I got drunk, it was not pretty.
Now, this wasn't the wine cooler night.
No, wine cooler night, there was a little buzz,
a buzz, okay.
But the first time I got drunk to where there was this zing, and I remember laying in this girl's lap that had to drive my car home, and I'm, singing or babbling on, and she's just rubbing my head, and I threw up, and I couldn't wait to do it again. I became cooler. I became funnier. I was this, skinnier kid that played tennis that, was desperately trying to rebrand himself.
Basketball player.
Yeah, exactly. Alcohol helped me do that. Then it became, okay, we're getting drunk this weekend. It started to be a deliberate choice. I went straight into the fast lane with this group of guys that had been drinking for a while, had been smoking, and doing some other things. These were the guys your parents were just like, who is that you're hanging out with? I went from, being an extraordinary student. The first time that my grades ever suffered was senior year.
So when you got to college?
The first semester of being in school, there was a C and then, a couple of B's, but it was respectable. It was a decent, report card to come home with. and, you know, getting a decent report card.
Right.
On the surface, it looks like everything is still okay.
I
But
get it.
starting that semester is when the drinking elevated and escalated. To be away from, you know, parents that were, to be fair, you know, there was always accountability. When you're going to be home, who are you with?
Right.
What are you doing? And so there was trouble. And now the guardrails are off and I don't have to go to class. And what I found is my alcoholism, I gravitate towards, you know, the people that are trying to do bad. That's where the girls were. That spring semester is when they started to take their nose down. I smoked a green substance for the first time that semester. And I remember what that felt like, where I was, who I was with. And it was that same kind of discovery of, wow, this is how I want to feel. Did
it match up to the alcoholism, to that feeling?
Oh, I did, absolutely. It augmented it. And then that made the desire elevated and escalated. And so, you know, in college, everyone was drinking. We would go to keg parties. There was a pride in saying, you know, I can drink. And I remember going to a party as a freshman and they put the keg in your mouth.
Oh, yeah.
To see how much you know, you can drink. And when I saw that impressed, you know, then that became, you know, kind of a goal. It's like, okay, you like that? Well, you know, let me show you how much I can drink.
So what's ironic about that, Ray, is that you're having that impact on women who are drunk themselves. So they've got some impaired judgment going on there as well.
Yeah.
So,
you know, there are consequences to that, especially when you're where I was. School and preparation for life started to get in the way of my drinking.
Really?
And that's really what it boiled down to, was that I don't want to go, you know, I don't want to do that. So then it was, I was starting this golden internship. Like in the field that I was in, there couldn't have been a better opportunity for me to do.
Yeah. So when you're that age, though, I mean, you think that you can do both, right? You're looking at the internship and thinking, I'll do that during the day. And you're looking at the drinking and
man, Howard, I wish it was that responsible.
No, it wasn't.
I wish it was. I wish that I was that responsible and could have multitasked.
But it didn't work, huh?
Not at all.
What happened instead?
There was too much work involved in being sober. So that started this pattern to where I started to push healthy people out of my life. And all of my friends became like-minded, people that wanted to drink. And it was just a recipe for disaster for me. So as I'm in this internship, I was just like, I don't want to do this. I suffered through this internship, through that summer. That was the turning point. So if I look back on it, this is when I should have been able to say there's an issue, there's a problem. So I've got this BMW. I'm the man. I'm driving around. And that allowed me to be in circles that I wasn't invited in before. I was treated differently. And it wasn't that we didn't go from rags to riches. It was just that now it was that particular status symbol, so to speak.
Did you seek that out from your parents?
Oh, I did.
You did?
I did. After he's gone to this different level.
Yeah. So after your dad becomes a man of wealth and resources, you tapped into that at some point.
Oh, I used it against him. I mean, I basically was just like, what's not fair? You know, my sister and brother they moved into, you know, big house.
Yeah.
For me, it was something that benefited this character that I was creating. And that was really what I'm very clear about now. I was far more concerned about what you thought about me and what I looked like to you than what was good for me, than what was, you know, edifying for my career.
Yeah.
And
that's pretty common, though, amongst most alcoholics I know. I think it was certainly that way for me. It's like what you think about me is more important than what I think about me. And all the advice you get over the years of, you know, people aren't really thinking about you all that much. But the illusion is that they are. And especially when it comes to material possessions and that BMW making a statement to the world that here's a guy who's successful or whatever else. And especially if people knew about your dad's business success, they might just immediately attribute that kind of success to you too. And so it's very easy to be who you're not when you've got all those trappings around you, isn't it?
And then impressing people I don't need to have in my life. Wanting the appreciation and approval of people that, you know, once that's gone, they're gone.
Yeah, you wouldn't choose to be around them.
Exactly. And so it's an addiction to validation almost as well.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
What happened was I'd started to drink and drive, and that was not a new thing. Thank God there's no one that I hit. There were some close calls. So we were racing, and I needed to go to the ATM. And so I pulled into the parking lot to use the ATM. There was this curb, and I remember I hit it hard, and it was just one of those things. It was like boom. It was this huge, ugly, loud scrape, and the car kind of goes up on the other side of the curb, and then I'm able to pull off of it, go to the ATM, get some money out, and then I'm driving back to go see this girl, and so there was a gas station right on the corner, and there's some guys at a bus stop. And they're pointing at my car. Right. So I was just like, thanks. Thanks for the compliment. And what was going on is that my car was on fire.
Oh, no.
Underneath the car. So I pulled into the gas station, and this is where God was. I never called this girl. I would just show up at her apartment.
Yeah, uh-huh.
And something made me pull over to, let me call her, make sure she's there so I'm not wasting my time. And as I get out to use the payphone, this is pre-cell phone, the guy's like, dude, your car's on fire. And so what I had done is ruptured the fuel line. And there's my green BMW going up in flames at this gas station. And it burned up in front of my eyes, right? Fire department came. I had no idea how that fire started because I'd gotten a radar detector installed and a new radio. And my dad went, and I allowed him to make that conclusion. And he went and gave the stereo people hell and this place that my son could have died and all these different things,
So you let him believe that?
Absolutely.
You never came clean
Nope.
about that.
And at that time, I became a liar. To do what I needed to do, I had to say what I needed to say. That was an indicator that things were going to get bad. I got another BMW, unfortunately, and that one met a similar fate. But when I got the second, new car, this is when I'm in school and other people started to make comments. He's never going to class. He's always he's always drinking. And then it went from we're drinking to have fun and it's like, and smoking and it was just something, I need this. I don't think that there was ever a period of time like where I wanted to stop or I tried to stop. Drinking was what I did. And
were you able to find a crowd that had a like mindset?
Absolutely. And that was, there were people along the way, like friends of mine I grew up with and other people that were kind of like, man, you're sitting on a lottery ticket that you won't cash in. There was everyone was just like, you have everything that you need to succeed and you're choosing not to, right? And so that the thing with, when I started to tell people, I don't want to go into TV anymore. I don't want to do the broadcasting anymore. After I failed out and I'm back here in Houston and I'm going to school, to college here, it just went to another level. Drinking every day.
So were you enabled then?
Absolutely. And I feel that I was a benefit of privilege. There are people that, you make one mistake or some certain people only have, one or two mistakes in them. I remember that morning getting up, drinking first thing in the morning. I was going to the record store. I was trying to get off the freeway to get to the service road. And for whatever reason, I was drunk, right? I mistimed it and I hit the wall. There's no reason that the car shouldn't have flipped over, like mechanically and engineering wise. And so I'm in a convertible. I didn't have a seatbelt on. And I just spun around several times on the ground and came to a stop. It had to be God. And so, the people that came, they got out and they were just like, are you all right? And I was so drunk that I was like, oh, I'm good. And I started offering beers to people. That's how drunk I was.
While your car is wrecked.
There's a record driver that comes and was just like, hey man, let me take you off the freeway before the cops come. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, and I think it was maybe a cry for help.
Yeah.
The cops show up and they're just kind of looking at the situation and he was just like, if I were you, I just wouldn't take the breathalyzer. And I think that was kind of, that was the beginning of what the privilege is, because what he was saying is, like, hey, you seem like a good kid from a good family. Just, call a lawyer basically so you can get out of this trouble. So I go to jail, first time going to jail. And I remember my mom in tears picking me up and, they were concerned because I'd been depressed about, being out of school.
Right.
And that's when my drinking upticked. And that was the first time that I'd been to a psychiatrist because, and so they called this psychiatrist who was a friend of the family. And I ended up in my first treatment center. I vaguely remember, my first meeting, but I do remember that after coming out of that I was like, well, maybe there is an issue. when I looked at what I'd done and I saw the car and it was just like, I entertained it again, connections. And I remember going to that treatment center and I was in there with, at the time, NBA players everyone would recognize.
Yeah, sure.
And so that was my first, introduction to treatment centers. Now, I would end up being in far less bougie treatment centers later in life. Something broke through, like I saw and could feel more that I could see it in you guys.
Right.
Because we were bused to meetings all over the city. Once I got out, there was the mandate, you need to go to meetings, you need to get a sponsor, you need to do these different things. And so it became a cycle. That was the beginning of, I get out, families encouraged, parents are encouraged because I'm doing these different things. And they're like, I'm going to meetings, I get a new car. Like, okay, I'm going to meetings. And I would learn what to say. And I'm backing out of the door.
Wow.
So I can go back to doing what I was doing.
So you're backing up to the cliff every time.
And this is what it boiled down to, Howard. I was going to prove to you all that I could drink like a normal person. The big book is very clear. The obsession of every alcoholic is to prove that he or she can drink like a normal person.
Yeah.
I refused to concede to my innermost self that I was alcoholic. And it was just simply, I made a wrong turn.
Yeah.
And so then I started the cycle of, okay, no more of this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? No more tequila. In fact, at a certain point, no more hard liquor. Just beer. And I would run these experiments and they would all fail. And so then it would start this other cycle of things would be decent and okay for a while. And either I'm going to school in token or I've gotten a job, and I'm doing something, and inevitably something would happen to where there would be an event or whatever it was. And I would drink too much. Then DUI started to show up. It became this cycle of another incident or tragedy. I would go on benders because what I also started to experience because of the drinking and the things that I was doing, I found out that I'm bipolar, manic depressive. And what that would do when I would drink is I would get to these spaces where I would stay up for a couple of days and I'm doing all this creating and writing. And then I was just like, I'm going to New Orleans. I had friends there and it was just this 1 week thing. Where's Ray? And I got really drunk. I ended up in Slidell, Louisiana. I don't know how. I got a ride. Somebody gave me a ride there because I wrecked my car driving drunk. And then I end up in a fight and I give a false name because I don't want to go to jail. I get arrested and they say, oh, you're wanted for Grand Theft Auto in Texas. I was like, no, that's not my real name. My real name is such as, so-and-so. And they were like, likely story. Yeah. And so, it took me, I was in jail for a week and I had to just, hey, listen, I'm telling you, what I'm saying? Here's my name, here's my address, here are my parents, So then at that point, it starts to get serious. They're like, you're going to rehab, you're doing these different things. What helped is my parents, they cut me off. They were just like, you're on your own. It just got so bad where I was losing material things. And this group of people that I'm hanging around, when that golden ticket is taken away, they were just like, oh, you're not buying this time? Okay, well, and I got a rude awakening. And so I ended up at a treatment center that is not the most glamorous at all. And there were people there that would talk to you very recklessly and would tell you, you're going to die. Yeah. And there were people dying. This is a deadly disease. And I'm very clear how lucky I was on multiple occasions, not to mention dying, in a car wreck.
How many treatment centers from the first one you went to until the last one had you gone to?
At least 6.
You went to 6 treatment centers.
So my parents moved to San Diego. My father went to start another company out there. I went to an NA treatment center. Eventually, I don't think that there were any wasted treatment centers because when I finally got sober, like all those experiences, it clicked. Yeah. Because at first I could hear what you guys, I didn't understand what you guys were talking about.
Were you just dismissing it the whole time? So you get out of a treatment center, you go back to AA, you slip. You go to another treatment center, you get out, you go to AA, you slip. What were you thinking and feeling as you kept going back to AA after each one of those treatment centers? Mm-hmm. Was it not for you? Were they wrong and you were right? What was the thinking that was behind all that?
I think that it changed over time. It started with, I don't belong here. Okay. I'm not like these people. Mm-hmm. I don't need to be here. Mm-hmm. And then another consequence, because the message never changes. You know what I'm saying? Like the message stays the same. And so what I'm doing as I'm hearing the message is that I'm looking for all the differences and not the similarities.
Okay. Yeah.
So then it's that, I don't like these people. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I do need to stop. Maybe I need to change, because it was still that same obsession, is that I just need to eliminate this.
Were you seeing the same AA people each time you went back to AA, or was it different people every time? So were there any people able to follow you?
In my first times where I had to be there, I was not establishing relationships with people.
Yeah,
I was not one of those people that was there and I'm ready.
You didn't want to be there.
No, not at all. I was not calling, there were people that called me, but I was not a part of it. So I go out to California and then I end up staying to live in California.
In San Diego?
In San Diego, in Del Mar.
Is this after your parents cut you off?
They cut me off, and then I said, I'll come out there and go to treatment. And so that got me back into decent graces.
Got uncut off.
Uncut
I get
off.
It. All right.
So I'm there and I'm going to meetings, and there are all these, amazing people that are in recovery, and I'm sharing, and I've gone a couple of times. Without the working the steps and the spiritual awakening and accountability, I believe what the big book says is that without a God, I don't have any defense against the first drink.
Right.
So I'm trying to stay sober. I'm trying to stay out of trouble. I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm going to meetings. It was a 6-month thing. I still have never worked the steps yet.
Okay, you were sober. Did you get a sponsor each time?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Oh my God, that was so reprehensible at first, and it still was. To be honest, Howard, I didn't want to get sober.
Yeah, I get it.
And I know now, my disease did not want to do the things that were going to get me sober. So I go back out, and a lot of dangerous stuff. These guys are drug dealers, actually, in California. I had a gun pulled on me. And I think this was my turning point. I'm hanging out, and I remember the night. I drank 20 Heinekens over the course of that night. And usually I was a pretty good drunk driver. This was one of those nights I didn't know I was going to make it home. I get home, and some kind of way, I fall in my bathtub, and I cut my back from probably the top of the shoulder blade down almost to the middle of the back. And there's all this blood. And I remember coming to, and the disgust with which the doctor was looking me at. He's just like, you should be paralyzed or dead. My blood alcohol was something obnoxious. And he just is like, you need help. And there were my parents sitting there looking at me. And I wished I could tell you, Howard, that that's when I got sober, but it's not. For the first time, decided that alcohol was my problem. So I stopped drinking alcohol.
Wow. So after all that, after all the treatment centers, after all the AA meetings, after everything else, that was your moment of reckoning.
Well, I don't think you heard the whole part of what I said. I said that I needed to stop drinking alcohol.
Okay.
There were other substances that came from the earth that God put here for you and I. So that was my problem.
That's an old story too.
Alcohol. And so what happened was, my father had a friend that owned, he was a franchise owner for a restaurant. And I became friends with his son, and his son had his own restaurant. And I was just like, I could do that. I was just like, listen, I'll put money into, if you help me start a business, blah, blah, blah. And he said, if you can stay out of trouble for a year, I'll entertain it. And that's the closest I came to using successful, you know what I'm saying? Like I was monitoring my, what I smoked, and I I didn't drink for a whole year. And sure enough, I set it up to where, and when it was a done deal, it was time to celebrate. I had friends that I knew, and we took some pills. We went to Vegas, started drinking again. And my dad was just like, I'm done. The only help I have for you is rehab.
So you got cut off again.
Again. And so at this point, I'd connected with some nefarious people. So I ended up moving in with this woman that I met, who was an actress and a model. That was actually turned out to be her side job, and her main job was working on Sunset Boulevard at a gentleman's club.
Right, I get it.
I'm living with her, and it was Easter, and I'd been cut off and hadn't talked to the family in about 6 months, and they were just like, they called, and they were like, we love you, blah, blah, blah. I was like, whatever. But I hung up the phone, and I just looked around at my environment. I looked at her, and I looked at what we were doing, and by the, she'd been taking pain pills.
Right.
And I'd started doing that. And I remember I made the decision. He's like, you know what? I'm sick of this. Because that's what he told me. It's like, the only help I have for you is rehab.
So you were back to drinking. You were taking drugs. You're living with this model / dancer, whatever. at the time. Take notice of the environment that you're living or, let's say, dying in.
Exactly. And we had a close family. Like, they were calling just to, like, we love you. And it was partly that, but it was also that I was sick of it. Yeah. I was like, what I saw was where I kept ending up, the kind of people I kept ending up around. The
consequences, right?
And I felt this darkness. I just felt this, the people that I kept putting myself in proximity to this real danger. It was so dark, spiritually dark, but also I really feared going to jail because of what these other people were doing. And I just know that I would not have done well in jail in California. Right.
I get that.
And so that was a part of it, but it was a decision for the first time that no one's going to make me go to rehab. It's like, I want to go to, it's like, so I drive down to this place. So this is what God did for me. This is what was required. It was this treatment center. It was in the mountains between San Diego and Mexico. And it was on this big ranch. And to get back to San Diego or civilization, like, it was a dice roll if you were going to make it back walking. Right? So I'm up here in this place. And I remember driving down there, and of course I had to get as low as I could on the way there. I present there, wasted, but encouraged. I'm like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. And then I remember getting in there, and everything crashed on my head. I realized what I'd done, how I messed this opportunity up, and I was at the jumping off point, Howard, because as much as I knew I needed it, I just didn't think it was in me, because I tried before. Like, I had made earnest attempts to stop.
Every time you stopped, did you have a sense that you were going to do it again?
Not necessarily. Like, towards the end, there were times where I really gave recovery a shot. I really was sober, and I was going to meetings, and I had friends. The thing was, I never got a sponsor, and I never worked the steps.
So you go out to this place in the mountains. Did you have to detox?
I did detox. And after detox, I entered into this suicidal depression because what it was I can't. It was really like that. I had experienced that powerlessness before, where I had tried to stop and could not use. So now, the combination of, look what I squandered. I had this opportunity to open this business. I had rehabilitated my image with my father. I'd stayed out of trouble. The big book talks about, we get tight at the exact wrong time. Whenever we need to show up for something. And so I've done it again, and I was like, what makes me think that I can, what's going to be different? What is going to change in this pattern? And so I prayed this prayer. God, give me some answers or let me go.
Let me go, meaning?
Let me die. Yeah, just put me out of my misery, basically. And it was as clear as this: you have to stop. And for whatever reason, in that moment, all the old treatment, the book, the things, this one or two people would say to me, because the whole time there was always somebody, like, in a meeting that would kind of see, and they would try, and they would give me these nuggets of wisdom, and then they finally be like, wait, if you're not going to do it, I can't.
So all that came back to you?
In an instant. And I went from almost being catatonic, not wanting to participate in groups, not wanting to come out of my room, to where I get it. I was like, I'm leading meetings, you know what I'm saying? And it was truly remarkable.
So you made a big turnaround. How long were you at that place?
About a week. It was about a week, and that's when the switch kind of flipped. And then I went, I started leading meetings. And there was a person there was a man there that took the time to say this: you need to do these steps. And it was a place to where you had to do the steps.
Right.
So for the first time, I muscled through, and it was very half-assed. I did a 4-step because that was my thing. I did the 1, 2, 3 shuffle.
Right.
I could see that I was powerless. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I would admit to some unmanageability. I believed in God, and I could see it in you. I could, it was. I could see that it was working. I could hear your stories. And I could see that other people. So I wasn't closed to it. And then I would read the part about the selfishness and self-centeredness on page 62, and I identified the actor. And, I'd do a 3rd-step prayer.
But you wouldn't do the work of the 4th step?
Absolutely not.
So you started writing at this point?
So I was forced to in this treatment center.
Okay.
Right? And so then this man so this is the first time he didn't become my official sponsor.
Right.
But he was somebody that I identified with enough to when I got out of treatment, I would go see him. I'm still going to meetings.
Wow.
I had an issue that I had a rehab romance that kind of pulled me away a little bit from meetings, but this is what saved me. Every summer we went on a cruise, right? And some of my worst acting out had been on a cruise. All the drinks are paid for, and so, I mean, just public embarrassment. And for the first time, I didn't want to go. I was terrified to go on this cruise. So having a guy that was just acting as a temporary sponsor, it was the first time I was able to say, man, I don't know if I can go do this. And what he said was, they have meetings on the boat. It was the first time somebody was able to be there for me, to book in something like that. And I went, and I was terrified, but I stayed sober.
Were there actual meetings? Or
there are actually meetings on the boat.
So you actually were able to go to meetings? Yeah, because I've known a number of people who've gone on cruises where they went to that meeting, there was nobody there.
I did. That happened to me. I went on a cruise. That happened one day. It was in a piano room. I went, I sat, and I read the big book for that whole hour.
That's cool.
I read how it works. I showed up the next day doing the same thing, and I'm just kind of reading, and this guy pokes his head in, and he was just like, is this an AA meeting? I was like, it is now.
That's
and
great.
He's like, thank God, I'm about to kill my kids. So I'm firmly convinced that this is a divinely inspired program.
We'll be right back. My friends, if you're enjoying AA Recovery interviews, I invite you to check out my latest audiobook, Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how more than 100 men have recovered from alcoholism. This is the word-for-word, cover-to-cover reading of the first edition of the Big Book, published in 1939. It's a relaxing yet meaningful and engaging way to listen to the Big Book anytime, any place. Have a free listen at Audible, iTunes, or Amazon. While you're there, search for my other audiobook, Lost Stories of the Big Book, 30 original stories from the first and or second editions missing from the third and fourth editions of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's an engaging audiobook that brings these stories to life for AA members who've never seen them. These timeless testimonials were originally cut to make room for newer stories in the third and fourth editions. But their vitally important messages of hope are as meaningful today as they were when they were first published. Many listeners will hear these stories for the very first time. It's also available from Amazon as a Kindle book or in paperback if you'd like to read along. You're going to love it. And we're back. Now, are we at 1993 by this point?
We're closer to 2000.
So 93 was the beginning of the failed attempts. And by the time you get to 2000, you've had this awakening in the mountains. You've asked God for help. You've turned to another human being for help and advice. You've started to work a fourth step. All of this stuff is coalescing into a basis from which you can stay sober.
Unfortunately, I would still need to do some research, Howard.
And how did that happen?
To me, this is the most important part of my story. After we get back from this cruise, unexpectedly, my father calls me over to his house. He said, listen, these people from this franchise, they called me and they said, listen, there's an opportunity in Houston. It's a can't lose. You know what I'm saying? Would you consider?
Yeah.
So my dad tells me, he says, tell me these different things. I don't think you're going to stay sober, but I need to ask, can you stay sober? You know, man, what am I supposed to say, right? I was just like, yeah, I think I can. I went on the cruise, right? At this point, I do feel like I'm good, right?
And how long have you been sober at that point?
Probably 8 months. I'm going to meetings, I'm seeking out meetings, and then lo and behold, we go and meet with these people, and it's a green light. We're moving back to Houston. Now, they tell you not to
make any
major changes, right? So at 8 months sober, moved back to Houston. I was home for 3 months, and sure enough, there's this huge opportunity unfolding. And I'm this success story. It's just like, wow, he was all this wasted potential, and now he's sober. I'm going to meetings, and I'm doing these different things. And then I decided, I was like, you know what? I want to be married before I do this. Because I just, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to, how will I know whether someone really cares about me if I become this entrepreneur? And I was trying to fix this old relationship with an ex, and she just wasn't moving on my timetable. And I remember I was like, you know what? Screw it. And I went out and I met my ex-wife that night. And so I was really good at the business that we were in. And so I proposed to her the day we opened my first store. We did so well that they offered to sell us all of their interest in the city. And so within 1 year of sobriety, I went from 1 store to 10. Here's what happened, is I'm going to meetings, but I never got a sponsor here. All these things are happening. I got the house, I got married, eventually had a son, got the Mercedes, and I'm going to church. This is 2002, 2003. I was dry for 3 years. I'm turning back into an asshole. I'm really thinking highly of myself.
Had you convinced yourself that church was the answer?
As long as I keep it out of my body. As long as I don't take the first drink. It didn't have anything to do, saying.
You had taken back.
Exactly.
Right,
and I was involved. I not only was involved with church, but I was involved with, the youth stuff. I was a mentor.
Yeah.
I was going to speak at schools.
Yeah.
To the outside world, I'm this success story. I'm sending people to AA.
Right.
Like people are calling me, hey, I got somebody that needs to get sober, and I'm sending. And I had this relationship with this basketball player, and I would see him almost every week. And I remember one day he asked me how my recovery was. And I was like, I'm good, but I haven't been to any meetings. And what happened was I was in an environment with entertainers and pro athletes.
Yeah, a dangerous place to be.
The big book says we can go anywhere if there's business.
If we're in a fit spiritual condition.
And that's what it was, is I'm rationalizing the business aspect of it, but I'm nowhere near in fit spiritual condition. Here's what happened. I had an accident. I fell playing basketball. I broke the biggest little bone in my wrist almost in half. And they had to go in and put a pin in that big bone. And it's some of the worst pain that I've been in. It was a long nagging injury that I ended up having to get more help from.
Yeah.
So I got prescribed the hard stuff, the pain pills.
Yeah.
No sponsor, no accountability, no meetings. And I did okay with it through the first part of it. And the day came that I lied to the doctor about my pain level. I knew it maybe wasn't that smart, but nothing happened. This is one of the ugly parts about this disease. I'm elevating in my career. We got invited to this concert, and one of my guests are this major magazine editor and a well-known big-time rapper. And I'd been around people drinking, smoking, strip club. I'd been in that environment and been okay. And that night, they were smoking. I was just like, let me have some of that. That night, that was the night that I chose. Was
your wife in the room?
She was there, and as I came to meet her to go to this event, she was like, "Are you high?" And I lied. I was like, "Oh, I was in the room." Right? But I remember how I felt at that event.
Were you still doing the narcotic pain relievers at this point?
No, I had been able to kind of move away from that.
And you hadn't started drinking again yet?
In fact, I never drank again, Howard.
So the joint was being passed around. You decided, me too.
It was a very strange night, and it was a strange conversation with my wife.
Right.
But I went home, and in my mind, I was like, that wasn't smart.
Yeah, wow.
And I used to go to Vegas twice a year for trade shows. Something similar happens there. And that, when I was going on that trip, I had the intention that I was going to find it. Because in my mind, I was convinced, that's not really using. And it sounds crazy and it sounds stupid, but it was just like, Bob Marley did it, like the spiritual thing and I'm not doing it all the time. I'm doing it, every blue moon, and I'm not drinking.
Yeah.
And all this other good stuff is going on.
So as long as you're not drinking.
Eventually. And it didn't take more than maybe 3 months. It went from that to where I started to do it every day.
Oh,
I
wow.
was seeking out, and I was around these entertainers and these different people. And I'm doing it clandestinely and privately, like in my backyard. And I've got kids. And
so your alcoholism had reignited as...
And I'm doing that alcoholically, the way that I used to do the drinking. The bottom was, I used to take pride in that my son had never seen me drunk. And I went to score with him in the car. There was a lot of shame as far as that was concerned. I left it out, and my wife saw it. She read me the riot act. And by now, things are starting to fall apart.
Yeah.
Bad decisions are being made with business, arguments with my father, arguments with different people. And
how about your marriage?
Marriage was having issues as well, because I'm going to all these places.
Yeah.
And I'm around these different people, and that is not done in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Like, it's another version of what I used to do when I was finding the losers, or I was hanging around these different people.
And it's easy to justify when you're saying, look at all the material success I have. Look at the business. Look at all the important people I know. Look at all the politicking that I'm able to do, to get my way when I want it. And yet,
church,
yeah. Look what I'm doing.
Helping the kids,
right.
Back,
So there's plenty of rationalizing that's going on. to support. So it sounds like that's what was going on.
And I was on the rise, like in business, you know, to be in the circles that I was in.
So why stop?
My argument to her, like that, I was able to sell her on that exact concept.
I get it.
I was just like, you know, this is stress relief. This is,
yeah.
And I'm not drinking. Those are all the things that we say. And what I said, at a certain point, I lost the grip of it. And some of the decisions that I started to make.
So what was happening was your addiction and the using was informing your decision making. And you're still smoking. You're still
at that point. At that point. But I feel like I'm doing it successfully because I'm still not drinking, and that's what I do as an alcoholic. Is I rationalize.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I'm still going to argue you that that's not using at that point.
Yeah.
But I'm also sharing with you. I'm not drinking.
Right.
I own this business.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a father. I'm doing all these other different things.
Plenty of reasons.
And also being dry, I turn back into an asshole. Everything that's on page 62 and 63. I'm, you know, selfish, self-centered, even, you know, I can be modest and self-sacrificing, right? Trying to make the play suit me.
Right.
But I'm stepping on the toes of my fellows and they retaliate.
Yeah.
It got to a point to where I told my wife that I was done. In my mind, I feel like I'm a step away from going to this different level. And I'm really good at what I was doing, not realizing that it was all about to fall apart. Thank God she went to my mother and told her that I was smoking weed again. And my mother was, you know, she never did Al-Anon, but she did, you know, she understood all the concepts. And so she called and she put a note that someone can call and say, hey, I have a person that I think is suicidal or is mentally unstable. You
can get committed.
Yes. I left the house. I went to stay with a friend and I was in the parking lot waiting for a to-go order. I was playing loud music and a cop comes over. He calls for backup and it becomes this argument. And I think I'm going to jail. And all of a sudden this car shows up, white, unmarked car. And it says, you know, and they talk to the cop and the cop pulls me out and puts me in this car. And I was like, where are you guys taking me? I was, you know, I had no clue. And he was just like, don't worry, you're not in trouble. And we pulled up at a treatment center. And so now I'm pissed off. I'm like, you know, my mom, And it was in this treatment center. And I'm in the room where you can't, you know, they take your shoelaces and your belt. And, you know, I'm not even on the rehab floor. I got the news that we were going to have to sell the whole business and that we were going to probably lose our house because we'd put our house up as collateral. As that washed over me, I said, maybe it's time. That's when I lobbied. I want to get up to the treatment floor. I was like, I'm done. I know where I need to go.
So what was that decision and that prayer that you had made previously? How did it become exclusionary to the... I mean, here you are again in a treatment center. You'd prayed once before to be relieved. Had you compartmentalized your alcoholism so fully that you believe that God will take care of that? Don't worry about anything else.
I still thought I was stopped, Howard.
You thought you were stopped even though you were doing a different substance?
I thought I was stopped, but the answer is that it's not about just not using for me. There are three sides of the recovery triangle.
Absolutely.
There's the service, the unity, and the recovery. Right? And the not using is it's a small portion of the recovery. The unity, if I don't go to meetings, I won't stay sober. I can stay sober if I don't do service, but I'm not truly in recovery. And for me, recovery is working the steps, all 12 steps with a sponsor and then sponsoring other people. I wasn't doing half. I wasn't doing most of that. I think I'm not putting stuff in my body, but I clearly am. And they had people that would come onto the floor, recovered alcoholics, bring a meeting. Another hour later, they would have a meeting downstairs. And, I'm assuming that there's the 12 step, there's a cell. It's just like, and they didn't have to sell me anything. I was just like, that's me. You know what I'm saying? Whatever it was that they were reading, and I'm telling my story, and they were like, why don't you come down to downstairs? And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And that was the first time that I was willing. And what was probably the death blow was having my son, who adored me at that time, him being brought in there and him just losing it because he's having to leave and I'm not going with him.
How old was he?
Maybe 3 or 4.
Wow, that's a drag.
I wanted what I thought I had and I didn't. You know what I'm saying? I thought that I had sobriety. I thought that I had recovery.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And what it opened up to was, for the first time, I was open to the concept of having a sponsor.
Huh.
Because that's really what was the fatal flaw.
That was the missing link.
And now I tell people all the time, I had a fool for a sponsor because I was my sponsor.
Yeah, I get that.
And the treatment center that I was at, they would bring us to one of the clubs.
Right.
So these are I started going to these two different clubs. One club was more salt of the earth.
Right.
The other one was and I got a lot out of both. I ended up finding more of a home.
Right.
At this one club.
Right.
That was amazing recovery. Some dysfunction.
Yeah.
But it was intense.
Yeah.
But there were people in there. They had something called a high sobriety meeting.
Right.
And you had to be 10 years sober or more.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the first time, like, I was envious. I was like, man, I want to be one of those people. Because I wasn't allowed in the high sobriety meeting, right? There were people there that would eventually be there to this day. They're still friends of mine. Right. Guys that are part of the big noon meeting.
Yeah.
I remember watching some of those guys get, guy got a 90-day chip. And I was just like, wow, you've been sober. I still did not want to be there necessarily because as social as I was, I would sometimes come 15 minutes late and leave early. But this time, I'm looking for a sponsor. And you would have thought, I was trying to meet my wife looking for a sponsor.
Yeah,
like I'm sitting listening. And then I went up to some of these, titans in the room. And there were a couple guys that told me no. And so then, I wanted to, my mind is just like, well, screw these people. But the problem is I was desperate. Because remember, I've lost so much. I lost this business and I'm going through the process of liquidating. And
right.
We had, we lost our house. I lost the house. What would always happen is I would come back to AA and get all those things back. And so then that's the other thing. At that point, my wife decided that she was done. I moved back to my parents' house.
Wow.
So now I'm literally at the doorsteps of AA, desperate.
Yeah.
And I have the gift of desperation. And I'm assuming that I'm going to get those things back. And what happened is I got my soul back, truly got my life back.
So you found yourself a sponsor.
I asked a guy named Cedric W. And it was because of what I heard him share. And that's really, to me, what the second step is about. Is I came to believe that I could be restored to sanity because of what I heard in his story. And the person that I saw him today. And his grand sponsor is a guy named Tom B. And so it's Tom B., Cedric W., and I. And I'm tagging along with them. And, Tom's been sober forever and knows everybody. And so they're bringing me to this meeting and to that meeting. One of the things about Cedric was that he would share and he would rattle off these pages and passages in the big book, right? And that fascinated me. And the things that he would point out, he would show me these things in the big book that I'd read before, but it had not really hit home. So I came to him and I was just like, I got to work the steps. I got to do a 4-step because this is my problem. And I do a 1, 2, 3. So I'm ready to do it. Let's do 1, 2, and 3 this weekend. Yeah. And he slow walked me. He was just like, I'm sponsoring you. You're not sponsoring you. So I had me do a 1st step and do all this work, for like a couple of weeks. You finally do the 2nd step, same thing. Yeah. All this work. 3rd step, do all this work. Then we went and prayed publicly. So I'm expecting the same thing on the 4th step. He said, all right, I want you to go get Red Bull, some no-dos, whatever it is that you need. And I want you to go home and I want you to write until you finish. Right. Stay up all night and do your 4th step. And that's what I did. And I sat and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And, and I did, it's a hustle. The 4th step is a hustle. It's like, who are you resentful at? Yeah. And what did they do? Easy. This person, my dad, my ex-wife. And what did they do? She did this. They did this. This is how it affected. And then he's like, okay, there's another column. You know what I'm saying? You write. He showed me on the book. It says, disregarding the other person entirely. Right. We looked at where we had been at fault. Yeah. And as I started to do that exercise, it became clear that I am the author of my troubles. Yeah. I step on the toes of my failure. It was this epiphany. And it's part of the manic energy of being up all night as well, more than likely. But I saw it so clearly. But in between that and meeting with him the next day, as soon as the sun came up, I'm texting my wife, and ex-wife, and I'm calling her. We're still married at the time.
You stopped smoking by this point?
I'm sober. Yeah, no, I'm sober.
You're completely sober?
Completely sober. So I've been sober maybe 3 months. I had a slip. 6 months probably of being sober. I went on a business trip. Somebody had I didn't have a defense. Right. And then I came back and I fessed up. It was the first time that I'd been accountable. And I was
so there was that slip that brings us up to 2009.
Correct.
Which is your sobriety day.
First part of 2009. And now 3 months into the summer, you know, and so I'm out of the house.
Right.
And I called my ex-wife and I was like, I can fix it now because I'm going to tell her, I was just like, I was wrong.
Uh-huh.
And so I called her, she met me, and there's this, you know, the acrimony is there, but I'm telling her how it was my fault and I didn't do this and if I had only done that and now I'm good and I'm going to stay sober and we can fix it.
Was this meant as an amends or?
Yes, it was a premature amends. It was a premature amends.
So you didn't clear it with your sponsor?
Oh, absolutely not.
I get it. Those often go wrong.
Exactly,
they?
right?
Yeah.
And so then, but what became clear, and I'm assuming that it was going to fix, but in that conversation, I could see in her tone and where she was, I was just like, it's not.
Yeah.
And in front of her, my heart broke. And in front of her in a parking lot, I just started bawling because the reality kicked in of what had happened.
Right.
So much so, you know, that she felt the need to come and hug me and be like, you know, God's going to work it out, whatever it was.
Uh-huh.
And I got in my car and I drove to Starbucks, the same place where my car had caught on fire.
Right. Uh-huh.
And I did my 5th step with Cedric through tears. And
did you tell him what just had happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I read my part with her and all these different things. And what he told me was like, you have to forgive these people. You have to let go of this resentment. From that point, you know, it took time.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up having to finish the steps with another person because there were some personal things that sponsor went through.
Right.
But the thing in my life that I'm proud of is that I finished the 12 steps. I remember maybe after the 9th step, my experience was this. The big book talks about the 10th step promises that all the promises say you will be amazed before we're halfway through.
Right.
And what it is that halfway through the 9th step, you know, like going through the first 8 steps, the rubber meets the road for me. And as I started to do those 9th step amends, that's when I started to change in a visceral way.
Yeah.
And it was then that I was still angry at her. Like I still had this resentment towards my ex-wife because of what was going on with my son. And now may be the time for you to start sponsoring people. Because I was in a bad place.
Yeah.
In about 5 minutes, this guy walked up to me and asked me to sponsor him. That is how I learned how this program really, truly works. Like when I started to sponsor this other person.
So that was your 12th step.
And I saw the change in him, it changed me. I still needed to finish the steps with another sponsor. And the reason why I feel like God did that was that person was able to get me to understand I have 2 key problems as an alcoholic. I'm selfish and self-centered. Right. And I'm in self-will. I'm not in God's will. Right. And it's these resentments. Resentments block me from the sunlight of the Spirit. Yeah. And he was able to allow me to see that that's what I was doing with my ex-wife.
So you started working with this guy even before you had finished the 12 steps.
Correct. And it was transformative. And that first sponsee finished all 12 steps.
Cool.
Now, that's not always been the case with my sponsees.
Is he still sober?
He's still sober.
Is he sponsoring other men?
He has sponsored other men.
So you get to see yourself in those men too, don't you?
And exactly. And that was so radical as a concept for me, for somebody that didn't want to work this program. And so as I got into recovery.
We're talking about the 12 years between 2009 and today.
Yes. So I started to get involved, not just in the rooms, but starting to go to coffee after. And I developed a crew of people, and I had litter mates, and I have people that to this day we still get together from time to time. My recovery evolved. I stopped looking at it as a social event, and I started looking at it as something I needed, like medicine. So I started to go to the Thursday meeting, and now I'm around men, and now I'm around people to where there's more recovery than disease in the rooms. There are more shares about solution than there are, their meetings would get hijacked sometimes where there's just not that much good recovery. Now I'm seeking out good recovery. I'm starting to be of service. I'm secretarying, people know who I am. And if I'm not there, I'm missed. Yeah. And I eventually, I correlated if I stop going to meetings for more than 2 weeks, I'll get squirrely. I'll start to get dry again. And so I'm just fortunate that I stayed around long enough, to get the sponsor, to work all the steps, and to start sponsoring other people.
As you stick around the meetings and stay sober, the men around you are staying sober, and it moves from being a very problem-oriented group of people into a very solution-oriented group of people over time.
And that's exactly, and I think that when I came into the noon Thursday meeting.
Yeah.
Right? At that point, as I got to maybe 3-4 years, I have more sobriety than most of the people at some of the younger meetings or social meetings, so to speak. But in this room, I felt like a newcomer almost. And then I remember you asking me to come eat at a restaurant, and I always had an excuse.
Yeah, you did.
And I was just like, I can't, this and that, I'm working, I got to do this.
Yeah.
And I remember there was one day that for whatever reason, I was just like, okay, I'll go.
Yeah.
It just seems so benign, it just seems like such a trite activity, but, and you got 30, 40 guys that just, taking over a whole table, and it was awkward for me at first.
Yeah.
I realized that, guys are all sober this long. This is what they do.
Yeah.
Guys hanging out and then the ability to rally towards the newcomer.
And that always happened at those luncheons.
Exactly.
There's nothing like breaking bread with another man to really solidify the relationship that is present within the meeting. But within the meeting, you're seeing them within the meeting environment. When you see them eating dinner or lunch out in public,
It's totally different.
You may not even be talking about necessarily recovery things, but you're talking about different things with recovered people.
You're living life in recovery.
You're getting to see that. You've talked about a number of the gifts now with sponsorship, being able to get out yourself to become more a part of the group. But I know you've also faced a few very difficult things.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you could speak to those.
And I'm glad you did that, because to me, it's the most important thing that I have to remember about recovery. I had been sober 9 years, not doing it perfectly by any means, but being of service, showing up to meetings, sponsoring people. And I had started eating healthier and started exercising and being very active. And I was on the rise in some of the things that I was doing.
Sure.
Unexpectedly, I got diagnosed with cancer.
Mm.
I'd had something that it didn't feel right or look right on my neck. I was operating under this terrible premise that, I don't want to know. It's a very foolish concept, but it's just like...
It's not unusual, though.
It's this kind of a vagueness. It was just like, I just don't want to know. So anyway, I find this out. It's very advanced. I caught it just in time.
Wow.
But the message that I'm receiving when I got this diagnosis is it's very spread. 20 plus tumors in my neck, several in my chest. It was a different kind of cancer. It was lymphoma. So it spreads first and then it starts acting like other cancers. So it's almost always fatal because people find out, kind of like after the fact. And I had these 2 big tumors in my abdomen. Mm-hmm. And so the message that I got was, it's very bad. You're going to have to start, this very hard chemo that you've seen and heard about. Mm-hmm. And we're going to have to do it now. Mm. And, so there was a 2-week stretch where we got I took a biopsy and was waiting for the results. And so I didn't want to share with other people because I didn't have the answers. So I was like, let me wait until I find out.
Right.
So there's this 2-week stretch. It's just very anxious. Mm-hmm. And then I get the news. And I go to a regular meeting that I go to on Sunday nights. And I shared in a meeting. Mm. That, I've been diagnosed and this and that. And it was in my share that I realized, drinking had not even crossed my mind. It literally had not presented as an option or a solution. And in the past, that would have been the first thing. It would have been a license to go out. In fact, that was one of my contingencies. When I came in, it's always like, how am I going to go to a wedding and not drink? How am I going to go to a football game? If I get cancer, because Howard, I had people that it wasn't the cancer that killed them, it was the chemo. You know what I'm saying? Like I was just like, I'll never do that. So anyway, it was an 18-month treatment. Wow. I stayed sober. I had to take medicine that I was able to check in with a sponsor, and it terrified me to do it. It took my recovery to another level. The seeds were planted. I did part of my treatment in California. And I remember being out there and I hadn't been to a meeting in like a week. And I called a fellow here that I got sober with. And I said, hey, I need a meeting. Within 30 minutes, she had connected me with someone. And I was at a meeting. Wow. I went to that meeting and they said, you need to go to this meeting. And I went to this meeting and I said, you need to go to this meeting. And then someone said, you need to go to this men's meeting. And it mirrored the Thursday meeting so much so. It was so uncanny. And these guys were so welcoming. My recovery has never been stronger. The whole experience with you and I and Zoom and being kind of pressed to survive has been some of the most rewarding in my entire recovery journey, that we were a band of brothers, putting together these Zoom meetings and just kind of making do, and then going to, different parts of the world and different parts of the country. I have a service commitment at the same LA meeting that I picked up my, 9-year chip.
Now, when you came back to Houston to our men's meeting and talking about the cancer, and the cool thing about the way you shared about it was it really opened it up and started to demystify it and started to destigmatize it, which was so important because there are so many men that are dealing with the same things right now. I mean, all types of different problems. And the fact that you were able to put yourself right in the middle of the Zoom meetings, setting them up, using your account, going through what you went through, speaks volumes about how important service is to your sobriety. Yeah. Is that a fair statement?
It's very difficult to take credit for or to receive accolades for that, because that is, I will do 3 meetings today.
Right.
Uh-huh. And not only to provide a meeting space for people that need it.
Right.
But I get so much out of the service and the meetings, and hearing guys that have been, one of the podcast guys that you had, Bob B. I don't know that we would have heard Bob sharing a meeting again. And so to have him as not only part of the meeting, but, to be able to lead, be able to share.
Yeah.
It's grown me closer to you. It's grown me closer to, a lot of people in a way that I never would have anticipated. And I think now it's hard for me to picture life without recovery. It's almost impossible for me not to trip back into the right groove. And I have these tools without a sponsor and without the steps. I will, at best, just not drink. And I really don't feel like I talked about God enough. The way that God has used me already.
It was implicit, though. I want you to know that, because everything you've said today during this interview, the spirituality of the program and your connectedness with your higher power has been reflected. Even when you were talking about some of the very difficult times, there was something that led you out of it that was a higher power.
I agree. And as what guard against is not to impose my higher power in meetings, because I know that a lot of people struggle with that. And it's something that I work on. I'm a God guy. It's a spiritual program.
Yeah, you've got to talk
Only
about
one of the
God.
Steps talks about alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Right.
All the other steps,
you know
what I'm saying, have to do with this relationship with the power. In fact, it says that I'm beyond human aid.
Oh, yeah.
Is that it must come from a power greater than myself. And I'm grateful for, and I don't want to take for granted that I've struggled. My higher power has changed and evolved over my recovery.
Yeah.
But today, that is a non-existent issue. You can't make me doubt him. I know too much about him. He works through me. He uses me.
And he works through a sober Ray.
And he works through a sober. And then also, this is a living, I still get nuggets of spiritual wisdom almost every meeting.
Yeah.
I still see things in the big book that I didn't see.
Because you're open and you're available and you're like a sponge.
And I plan to continue to work the steps.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't graduate from this deal. I will never be cured.
Yeah.
I will always have this. However, it's one of the only afflictions that I know of that when treated, I'm better off.
Oh, yeah.
Than I was.
Yeah, you're a better man. It's like
before.
Yeah, it's like walking into a meeting and feeling one way and walking out and feeling so much better, irrespective of what was said. It was just about the environment.
Oh, yeah,
it's about the God consciousness. It's about the presence. It's about just having an hour to be with other human beings in a non-judgmental, all-loving environment.
And God speaks to me through you guys.
Absolutely.
In an uncanny way. I will have some issue going on that I can't figure out and I want to talk to somebody about after the meeting. And someone will share. And literally God will speak to me in direct terms.
Yeah.
And say, this is my will for you. So my prayer is, God, I want what you want for me.
Yeah.
When you want it for me.
Yeah.
Because I want what I want for me when I want it for me.
Well, absolutely.
So the third step is I want to want what you want for me because your plans are better than mine.
Right, right. And that little piece of self-centeredness and self-involvement and self yields to that kind of thing, but only when we allow it to yield. Yeah. And so that's such a beautiful sentiment. It's also a great way for us to kind of wrap up here because your story is very salient for listeners who have ever struggled with staying sober. Your story is one where a man who has been a man of privilege and enablement by his environment and by the situations around him, those things didn't work to enrich the man that's sitting here today.
Amen.
You had to lose, you had to suffer, you had to get to a point in your life where you were ready to check out before you got the very thing that is more valuable than any of that other stuff. Is that a safe statement?
Don't quit before the miracle. And I think you're absolutely right. I needed to fall. And it's the falling forward as opposed to falling backwards. That's the only difference.
And the great thing about it is falling forward, you're going to fall into the arms of people who really do love you and care about you. I appreciate you doing this. I love you, and I'm grateful that we've had the opportunity to do this today, Ray. So
I love you. I'm so glad we got to do it in person. I think God wanted that to happen.
Yeah. Again, many thanks.
Thank you.
Well, my friends, that's a wrap for today's episode of AA Recovery Interviews. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed AA Recovery Interviews, will you please tell others how to listen to it? Think of it as a little AA service that spreads the word about this rich and meaningful listening experience. It's yet another helping hand we can all extend to alcoholics everywhere. Visit my website, aarecoveryinterviews.com, where you can listen to every episode of AA Recovery Interviews. And if you want to contact me directly with any comments or suggestions, simply email howard@aarecoveryinterviews.com. By the way, this podcast strictly adheres to AA's 12 traditions and all General Service Office guidelines for safeguarding anonymity online. I pay all production costs, and no one receives financial gain from the show. AA Recovery Interviews and my guests do not speak for or represent AA at large. This podcast is simply my way of giving back to AA that which has been so freely given to me. The next episode of AA Recovery Interviews is on the way, so keep coming back. It'll be here soon.